You're listening to the Vint Podcast, where we bring you interviews and stories from around the world of wine and spirits. From winemakers and critics to sommeliers and master distillers, we'll explore the people and businesses who are instrumental in shaping the future of today's food and drinks culture. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vint Podcast presented by Corvin. Corvin is the world leader in at-home wine preservation, allowing you to pour a glass of your favorite wine and enjoy more bottles in your cellar without having to pop the cork. As always, I'm joined by Billy Galanko, who looks like Safari Dan.
I guess that's what that shirt would be.
I can say more stuff like that because we're on YouTube now, right?
Yeah, we're back. We're going to be really coming out all some past episodes as well as some new episodes. We're really going to be putting everything on YouTube in a much more organized format. So we're looking forward to that. So everybody check in there. You'll be able to see. We'll be showing off some bottles, or if we reference books or things, we'll also have those. So definitely tune in, subscribe, like on the YouTube as well.
Yeah, you'd be proud of me. I had some Petit Manseng over the weekend. Actually, it's Vidal Blanc, Petit Manseng, Chambersen, Traminette. But we were at the Jerry Seinfeld stand-up in Virginia show that he was doing out there. And it was like lawn seating. And so we took a Lightwell Survey wine from the Shenandoah Valley and 40-something% Vidal Blanc, 30-something% Petit Manseng. And I thought of you.
Awesome. How small was he and what did he sing?
I know there's no singing, only Ryan Hamilton and Jerry Seinfeld and our little rosé skin contact thing we had. Kitchen sink blends.
Yeah, for listeners who don't know what we're talking about, that's the running joke that I just find hilarious. That is, whenever anybody says Petit Manseng, you have to ask how small the man was and what did he sing. Yeah, that makes me laugh every time. But yeah, so today I'm actually, speaking of kind of more obscure varieties, I'm really excited to have our guest, Saša Radikon, on. It's a long time favorite wine of mine, and it's a great kind of continuation. We've had this like really excellent Italian winemaker series, and I think it's really interesting that we've gone about it in a way that most people don't. We started in Sicily, went up to Piemonte with Gaia, and now we're going to be in Friuli, northern Friuli, the Colli Orientali, which is just like the northeast corner of Friuli, just on the border with Slovenia.
Yes, I mean, Sasha's family, the Radikon estate is, I think they're winemakers through and through. They're not afraid to innovate. They're not afraid to change. Sasha's, I think, great grandfather, I guess it was pivotal in setting up the estate after World War I, which Sasha talks a little bit about. And then, his dad was really the pivot point for the estate into making the types of wines that they're making today. And so it was awesome to hear from Sasha.
Yeah. So a little bit of background on Radikon. So I had first heard about them through my sommelier circles. This was at one point a very sommeliers seek that kind of culty wine, the ones you knew if somebody dropped Radikon, they knew what they were talking about with wine. And then before I went to Slovenia, I got Simon Wolf's book that we referenced a little bit ago called Amber Revolution. And it was about orange wines, but in the style of making high quality, long lived orange wines. So I know we've probably talked about this a lot, and people are probably wondering why we talk so much about orange wines, but these wines in particular, and I referenced it a little bit in the episode, are basically their top tier wines they spend 3 months on the skins and then they spend 3 years aging before another year and a half of bottle age. So they get the same treatment as Brunello de Montalcinos or Barolo Reservas before they're released, or even longer aging than first growth Bordeaux. So these wines are serious wines with serious tannin, serious acid, serious structure, and they're really taste that way. They have depth and complexity that's crazy that you don't see in most orange wines. So it's actually interesting. We talk about their portfolio is they actually had to come out with different levels of orange wine because that top tier is just so serious and amazing and long lived that it's not meant to really be drunk young. So then they had to come out with one with a little less skin contact that still has the depth of flavor, but is more approachable in the youth. And now they're coming out with even yet another one, which is really interesting to me, alongside of some of these amazing red wines that they make. But it's hard to understate how, if you talk to wine people about it, people collect it. It's a really collectible, well-known kind of cult wine. Stanko Radikon, Sasha's dad, along with Jaško Grobner, are really the two founders of this kind of serious skin contact made wine movement. And you would never guess, like when I went and bought my wines, it was just Sasha and his mom working in their office that's like right next to their house. Like it's just very bare bones is what they need to make wine. There's no pretense. They're literally just trying to make the best wine that they can and pay homage to their heritage and the grapes and obviously his father's heritage as well in the area.
Yeah, and they produce and sell their wines in 500 ml and 1 liter, so half liter and liter bottles. And I read online that the reason for that is because Sasha's dad thought that 750 wasn't quite enough for 2 people to share, and he wanted to make half liters so that you could have a half liter of white and a half liter of red at dinner, and you get to have both styles. And yeah, I think that's an interesting convention and is why they have liter sizes.
That's super neat. I think also, so before, just to set the scene a little bit more for everyone before we hop into the interview, this where Radikon is an area, the town is called Oslavia, and this particular little kind of broader region around it is called Gorizia, or there's a bigger town called Gorizia, so it's kind of like lumped in with that. And then it's literally just a couple kilometers away is the Slovenian border, with like Goriška Brda is what the area there is called. And these borders are just arbitrarily moved over the years. Like their family's been there since 1804. At some points they were in Slovenia, at some points they were in Italy. And for a period of time when Slovenia was part of Yugoslavia, there was actually a hard and fast border between the two. You had to go through checkpoints, drive long ways, and it was actually really difficult to go back and forth. So some, like he mentions in the call, some families were actually cut off. People had vineyards on one side, their winery on the other, and they weren't actually able to bring their grapes across to make it. So it's interesting here. They have a new project that they're working on in Slovenia, but it's less than 3 kilometers away from their winery now. So it's interesting. It's a really intermingled cultures there. There's definitely Slovenia. It's a very distinct kind of Friulian Slovenian kind of culture combo there that I think is also really, really cool to visit. But it's also interesting to think that Sasha was raised as an Italian in Italy. He obviously speaks Italian, but you can tell his accent is just so different from Gaia's, which is like on the other side, northern Italy still, but just completely further west. And I think it's just fun to have them in back-to-back episodes because it's like just hearing these regional dialects is just so different based on their cultural influences.
Yeah, you could say this almost about any winemaking country, but there's so much diversity. You could spend a year interviewing folks from all over, all the different regions, especially in Italy, which have so much distinction between them. But yeah, it was a great combo with Sasha. He obviously has a lot of passion and a lot of knowledge about his family's history and about their wines. It was great to have him. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Before we get into it, though, just a word from Corvin. Remember, if you're looking to drink more wine from your cellar without worrying about wasting what you can't consume, you should buy a Corvin system. It'll be your best friend. You can visit corvin.com, use code VINT15 or 15% off your purchase, one of their devices. If you're a member of the trade, visit trade.corvin.com for exclusive discounts on their entire range of products and accessories for home and work. And without further ado, here's our interview with Saša Radikon.
Hi, Sasha. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. This is coming full circle for me. We had Simon Wolf on recently, and I read more about you and your family in his book, and that inspired me to actually go to visit you guys in Oslavia and get some of your wine. And that continued on. And as I've mentioned to you and this podcast, I had that wine at my wedding. So I'm really excited now to have you on to share more about Radikon and what your family has built over the years.
Our family, our winery, it's basically around. We are in Oslavia, where the Oslavia is a small village very close to Gorizia, in the middle of the best part of the Colli Orientali, and we are very close to Slovenian border. We are almost like 500 meters from the border, and the story here around it's quite complicated because World War was one of the biggest battles on his own. So that was held just in Oslavia, and in this part. Obviously, after the battles after World War I, which is almost a little bit more than 100 years ago, everything was completely destroyed. And after a period where we had basically good viticulture and good farming, now after the war, it was nothing basically. And our family was here during the war. And the family Radikon, it's around these places from 1807. And after the war, my grandfather bought the house. Just after the war, he bought the house and he started to do some agriculture, which was mainly vegetables and things like that. Then my grandfather married my grandmother, who was in this house, and he started to make some wine. My grandfather was making some wines, but mainly open wines for local restaurants. Only wine for the small restaurants. It's open wine. They just basically sell to the people. And then was this very small thing. It was everything starts from 3 hectares, and not all the 3 hectares was planted with vines. There was still a lot of agriculture, a lot of farming, a lot of vegetables in the middle, some fruit. We had cherries, we had different kind of fruits. And once my father took over in the late 70s, more or less, he started to really think about what can be viticulture and enology in this region, in this part of the region. And he starts basically to bottle wines. And from 1980, we are bottling wines. At the beginning, all the wines my father did was more, let me say, conventional, classic French style wines with, at the beginning, more stainless steel. Then in a short time, he started to use barriques. Then there's more this part of this was the period in the 80s when everybody wants to make barriques. And he planted the international varieties like Chardonnay and Sauvignon. But after that, he started to think about maybe we need to go back to the old techniques. The old techniques means start to use the skins on the white grapes too. This was a process which takes a long time, obviously. And it was my father together with Josko Gravner, which is basically our neighbor, that developed this technology again, because they rediscovered something which was completely lost. Because in the 80s, in the early 90s, the technique of the skin contact was really used. But in all this period, in the 60s, 70s, with the new wave of stainless steel and technology and enologists, they forget everything about skin contact and white wines. Then in 1995 was the first vintage when my father started to make this kind of wine. And from that period, basically, we always make white wine made with skin contact. What it means, it's basically a white wine made the same way of red wine. We put all the parts, the juice and the skins together in a vat, in an oak vat for the fermentation. And then we have the fermentation with the skins. It means that we have more color extracted from the vines, from the grapes, because even the white grapes are not completely white. They are still yellow and then a little bit orange sometimes. Absolutely, when in particular with Ribolla, when it's ready, it's almost orange. When it's ripe, it's almost orange, and this is why the color comes to the wine in the same way as red. And then from that period, from 1995, my father was trying every year something new. We tried basically all the timing you can, from few days to 1 year. And then now we are quite stabilized on a 3 month skin contact. And after that, you should age wine longer time. It means you should age it for we age it 3 years, another 1.5 year in bottle before we sell the wines. Just because today we was doing the bottling, then today we bottled the part of the wines from 2021. Then we bottled the Yakut and the part of Oslavia today.
You had mentioned that your father you said he wanted to return to the traditional way and wanted to include skin contact in his white wine making. Do you know what experience or insight he had to want to go that direction? Or was it just learning about how they used to make the style and trying to come back to it? Or what experience led him to actually go full forward into it?
what my father told me in that period, was remembering from his childhood, then when he was a child, and talking with his father, which was with my grandfather, how they used to make wines. I think that the skin contact for many years we should go in that period if you want really to understand why they use the skin contact, why they stop using the skin contact. Why they use it, it was quite logical because it was quite easy to understand. Because basically, can you imagine, it was a family, 4 or 5 people, 6 people maybe. And when in September the harvest arrived, the 5 or 3 or 4 or 6 people, they go to the vineyard, they harvest, and they harvest all day by hand. The vines, there was very full of grapes in that period because nobody was thinking about reduce the production or something like that. They try to do as much as they can. And for these 4 or 5 people, it takes a long time to harvest this part of the vines, of the vineyards. And then basically the biggest work for the men, it was to take the grapes from downhill to the house, to the cellar. And then it was very slow. Then what they did when they arrived up there, they just put all the grapes in one big vat and they go back down to pick up more. And this process can take a long time. And because of this process, the fermentation obviously starts. There was no chemicals, there was no sulfur, there was no nothing on it. Then the fermentation starts. And after that, they understood that basically if you put these skins, they are after they ferment a little bit, 1, 2 days, or maybe 12 hours, maybe 24, I don't know. But if they put them when they are fermenting, the pressing is much easier. And they need to press by hand. My grandfather had only a basket, a hand press, basically. Then we still have it. It's still here, but I can't imagine to press things with this machine. And it can be very, very, very hard. And they know that if they have some fermentation on the skins, they can do this better. And this was why they was using the skin contact, because of the practical stuff. It was easier to press. And the other thing they know is that they do some skin contact, they can extract some more flavors and they can extract some more tannins. Basically, they didn't know we call it now tannins, but they know this thing, it's a preservative for the wine. And the wine, they can stay better for a longer time. It means that you have easier work and a wine stay longer. Then this is the why at the beginning they was using this kind of technique. And why it goes away, there's another big question. It's another thing. We should go back in the 60s mainly. In the 60s, what's happening in the countryside in Italy, it happens that the water was in the pipe. They finally put the bathrooms inside of the houses. And basically everything was much more hygienic because, we had the First War, we started to build the houses. Then World War II took out a lot of people from here. There was no battles in the World War II in this area, but they took off a lot of people. Then rebuild after the war was again something you should do. And in the 60s, we had water finally, and they start to think more hygienical. Everything which was dirty before, it must be clean after. And the same happens with wine. It was this thing which has a darker color, has a more intense flavors, sometimes higher VA and everything. The people didn't accept anymore this style of wines in that period. It was a period where the people wants everything clean. If I can remember on my first studies in enology, there was this, in Italy I can say bianco carta. It means it was wine which was basically without any color, completely like water. And for me, it wasn't drinkable, but the people liked it in that period. Then you should go back. That was the period for these kind of things. And trying to rediscover the old technique of my grandfather, my father really tried to understand, but my father was when he was thinking about something, he just tried. He was just trying, and that was his thing. He was trying, and he tried in 95 with this big this part of the production, and he loved the wine. Once he loved the wine, he knew this would be the future. And he's not thinking about what was the past, what is now, what can be now, and everything. He was in that part was really, when he fell in love with something, he stayed on that.
It's so interesting because some people change their techniques based on just like technology in the winery, but it's not like full sale. Like we just got running water in the house and that's going to help us with like technology. It's literally like we're going to make this conscious choice just to make a cleaner wine. This was like a full sale technological boom. That's cool. I want to talk a little bit now about the varieties that you work with. You've talked a little bit about Ribolla Gialla, and I think we can talk about that. I also want to talk a little bit about Ano or Tokai or the Yakut you make. I think that's just a great name in general from the region. And I also have a Pignolo of yours as well. So it'd be cool to talk about some of the grapes you use in the wines, because I don't think our listeners are as familiar.
And as I told you before, my father planted some of international varieties, which we still have. But from the last, I can say, 30 years, we are really moving to local varieties, which is exactly Ribolla Gialla, Tokai Friulano, Pignolo. This is basically the three varieties which we are planting now. Ribolla is one of the most important wines for us, and grapes and vines, by the way, because it was always in this area. Ribolla was always in this area, and this is an interesting story about this. It was the only condition my grandfather put to my father to leave him the winery. It was, now you can plant whatever you want, but on the top of the hill, on the best vineyards, you should plant Ribolla Gialla. That was the only condition my grandfather put to my father to leave him completely the winery. And at the beginning, my father was, okay, why I should plant this thing, which is very difficult to sell. Can you imagine? 30 years ago, nobody knows about Ribolla Gialla. Nobody even know that it existed, no? And obviously, even all the market moves slowly to more local varieties. We can all over Italy and even France, probably it's starting to be really more local varieties. And in the same way, it's why the people in this area was Ribolla Gialla, Tokai Friulano was mainly planted. Even a little bit of Malvasia, not everywhere, but Malvasia Istriana was even planted in this area, not a lot, but a little bit it was. And now, after years, I can really understand only probably a small part of why they was using Ribolla and Tokai Friulano. Can you imagine? We have these nice hills, but the climate from the top to the bottom of the same hill is completely different. Then Ribolla needs sun, needs dry, needs to stay on even on a poor soil, otherwise it's producing too much. And the same hill on the bottom, it's not the right place to plant Ribolla. Then you can plant it on the top, but you can't plant it on the bottom. And then this is why Tokai Friulano is really covering this part of the vineyards. Then we can have the Tokai Friulano on the bottom, which stays very well, even if it's a bit cooler. It stays well, even if it's a little more higher moisture and a little bit more fresh. Then the two different varieties, they really work well together. Pignolo is another local variety, which is more local from northern part of Friuli Colli Orientali Friuli. It's a little bit more northern, where they have a little bit more reds, but Pignolo is really one of the varieties which shocked my father completely, because he tasted the wines and he said, if they can do this style of wines on this part of Italy, we found the Nebbiolo for Friuli. Then we planted in 1998. It's very complicated vine to grow. It's very difficult to grow the vine by itself, because it has a very big, it's difficult for the attachment, the American rootstock. It's difficult to grow the vine by itself. Sometimes you have a nice vine, but you don't have any grapes on it. Then it's really, really strange production for Pignolo. But at the end, the results, I think they are very, very good in this area. And even if you asked me 3 years ago, I say I will never plant it again. Now I'm just thinking, when can I plant some more Pignola?
That's awesome. I can't wait to taste mine.
No, Sasha, I wanted to switch and talk a little bit about the work in the vineyard and your guys' approach to, thinking about cultivating your vines in such a way that draws out the terroir, is biodynamic in a sense, and is good to the ground that you're farming. How do you guys think about that, and how has that changed since maybe your grandfather or your father to now?
I don't know how exactly it was when my grandfather was here, but I think that for one point it was much easier and different. We have machines now which that they didn't have, but the soil was maybe more respected in that period. We try now to go back to that balance on the soil. Sometimes it's difficult to find the balance because we have few problems in the area. The big problem is landslides. Then once you find a balance on the top of the vineyard, if you have a landslide, you should start again. And because basically you will discover a new part where the balance is not yet there. Then it's important the connection between the soil and the vines. The terroir for us is mainly, we call it the soil we have, we call it ponka or opoka in Slovenian. It's a kind of flint. It's a marl. It looks like a rock, but it breaks with the sun and with the rain and everything. It looks like a rock, but you can basically break in your hand. After 6 months, it stays outside. You can really break it easily. Then we have clay on the top, and we have this kind of soil on the bottom, under the soil, which is a very poor soil. There's not a lot of nitrogen in it. There's a lot of minerals, which is important. And this is the thing, that you don't have nitrogen. We try to find it. We don't want to just adding nitrogen to the vines. We try to make a cover crop, I think it's called, to plant seeds, to grow and to make this. We need to use tractor, then we need the grass on the floor, in the vineyards. And now this is the thing now. Years ago, maybe we have less problems with mildew and oidium. Then it means even less spraying. Now we should spray more because of the weather. We have another big thing is the climate change. We can really feel it last 5, 6 years. I really feel it in the vineyards. You can understand that years ago, the best vineyards here was south. And after that, like 15 years ago, it started to be southeast. And now east or even west, it's fine. Sometimes even northeast is very good. It means that you have a fresher air, you have a fresher vineyard. Then some of the varieties we still plant only on south, but some other varieties, like Tokaj Milano, for example, we did plant it in again, it's northeast exposed vineyard. It means this is the big change. You can't have the same temperatures we used to have. I remember during the harvest, we generally harvest after I start school. In Italy, we start school around 10 to 15 of September. And it was very difficult for me to do the first days of harvest. Sometimes yes, but mainly no. And now the harvest, it's always beginning of September. It is very difficult to keep the temperature low. We didn't use, like in the house of my mom and my father, we didn't have any air conditioning, and we still don't have it. But now we are thinking about putting it in because it's too warm. But for many, many years, we didn't need. During the harvest, it was cold in the morning and cold in the evening, maybe a little bit warmer during the day. But now you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's already warm. And this is the big difference, because the vines by itself, they need the excursion of temperatures to be really right. And sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. Then it depends on the vintages. But like last few years, we had the first part of the harvest, which was very difficult just because of this, because it was warm from the morning to the evening. And This is why we harvest only in the morning in this case. If it's too warm, we only harvest in the morning. And then we put the grapes, generally we put the grapes inside of the cellar to cool down. And then we destam in the evening or the day after in the morning. This happens many times. Never happened. It happened few years. Like 2003 was very warm, but it was exceptional. But now we don't really have this thing. Every year it's happening at the beginning. The first days of harvest, it's always problem with temperatures. Then this is the terroir. It's for us, it's really important because of the soil, because of the minerals of the soil. This is even, I think, why we are really able to make this kind of orange wines, because we can really push the maturation to the limit, to the ripeness, and we don't lose the acidity because of the minerals of the soil. This helps a lot for us to make this style of wine. And I think that if you can have a right grape, you should still have the acidity. Otherwise, these wines are not working well.
Can you talk a little bit about the styles of wine, or not necessarily the styles, but the different lines of wine you make? I know you have your own Slatnik that came out later too. So can you talk about the different wines you make and what makes them different between each of them?
Absolutely, yes. Now we should go back in the story again. We should go back in time, because if you can imagine being a wine producer of orange wines in the, let me say, 2000 years, 2005, 2006, that's where the idea of Slatnik and CV comes out. What happens? That a lot of people were starting to make orange wines. Everybody was really pushing the fermentation on the skins to the limit, 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, as much as you can, basically. And then in that period, we had a group of people, of customers, who was following us, and they was following us from the beginning. The beginning was the first 1 week, 2 weeks, and then very fast we went to 2 months, 3 months. Can you imagine? 97 was 1 week, 2001 was already 1.5 months. Then the evolution was always pushed in that way.
Wow.
And in that period, the new customers, the new people who were approached to this thing, they wasn't able to understand the limit of the pushing the maceration to the limit. They was much more difficult to understand. Then we had this group of people who loved the wines, but this group of people was too small. Then if we want to teach about orange wines to more people, the only way was to make something which my father did at the beginning. Then my idea was to make a wine which is made with the same technique my father used in 1997. It means 1 week on the skins, and then shorter aging in the cellar, just 1.5 years in the cellar, and then release the wine ready to be drunk, more fruity, more fresh, more direct, not too much extraction, not too much tannins. And this was the idea behind Slatnik and CV at the beginning. 2009, we did the first vintage. I think it worked. It worked very well because the people really approached to the orange wines thanks to these two wines. And then this was the first part of it. Was my project. Obviously, my father and me, we was working together on it. But it was the idea was to make a middle step for the people who have to approach orange wines.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's one of the other ones I have in my cellar right now. But can you explain the difference for the people who haven't necessarily tasted them? The Ribolla that has spent a really long time. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. The Slatnik and CV. Slatnik is a blend of Chardonnay and Tokai Friulano. They are co-fermented, made on the skins for 8 days, and then 1 year big oak barrel, then just bottled and released in 6 months after bottle. CV is made in the same way, but CV, it's obviously a name it's CV Pinot in Slovenian, it's Pinot Grigio, then it's 100% Pinot Grigio grapes. But yeah, that's it. It's 100% Pinot Grigio grapes. The Oslavia, Ribolla, and Yakut, which are our wines, the wines my father did for many years. We start with Oslavia, which is again a blend of still co-fermented of Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. But here we have longer skin content. Here changed everything. Then it's 3 months on the skins, which means that the first 15 to 20 days, we have the real fermentation. And after that, we all basically have wine and skins together. Then we fill up the vats. Then we try to take the oxygen out of the barrel, and we close it. Then we leave the skin still inside. And I like to say we are making something which is more like an infusion with wine, which is alcohol, and skins. And in this period of the 3 months, we extract much more tannins, much more of everything. And this thing basically needs more time to be ready. After you take off 3 months after, you see that the wine it's really good, but it's still having this tannins are very aggressive, and all the flavors are very, very aggressive. Then basically we should wait longer time in oak. It means that we stay 3 years in oak and 1.5 years in bottle before we sell it, because we think that we want to serve the wines when they are ready, and we think that this is the right period to release the wines. Obviously, anybody can age these wines longer, but and they will be better. But I think that after 4.5, 5 years, the wines are ready to be drunk.
I think what's interesting to me is when some people are still just learning about orange wine, or they think there's this category, but it's your wines in the, especially the Ribolla based ones, or even that one you were just mentioning, they can age and develop. They have such structure and tannin and acid that it's almost like you wouldn't drink a first growth Bordeaux or a second growth Bordeaux in 2 years. People let them sit and they develop, and they're very serious wines. And I think it's a very similar parallel. Whereas the Slatnik is something that's purposely meant to be drinking younger. Maybe it's like a high cru Beaujolais or something like that. But it's basically like some of these wines that are really well made and thoughtfully made, but they're like, it's different. So while they're both technically orange wines, they're just very different styles. And I really appreciate you explaining that. I guess.
Yeah, I didn't talk about Bola and Yakut. If you want, we can finish that part.
Yeah, no, that would be good. And just any of the other ones you make too. I'd like to hear everything.
Yeah, okay. And then we have the Ribolla, which is 100% Ribolla. It's made in the same way as Oslavia. 3 months skin content, 3 years in oak, and 1.5 years in bottle. And Yakut, which is another monovarietale, it's Tokai Milano grapes. The same way, 3 months on the skins, 3 years and 1.5 years in bottle. Just to be sure that.
Yeah. Can you? I know it's like a tongue-in-cheek regional term, but can you talk about the origin of the name Yakut? I love that. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about. I don't know for Italian though. What I can talk about, it's fine. Then the thing is, when the first Yakut we released, it was 2001, because in the 2001 we rented a new vineyard from this part, and my father hadn't any Tokai for a long time. And when he rented this vineyard, there was some very good Tokai which he didn't want to take out, and that he said, okay, let's try to do something. And he didn't want to change the style of these wines already he made. Then he said, let's try something different, and then we make the fermentation on the skins over Tokai Milano. When it was the moment for the release, it was basically 2005, more or less. And in that period, the name Milano was permitted only for the DOC. And in the same vintage, with the vintage 2001, the DOC decided that our colors are too intense and the wines are not good for this appellation. And then basically we find out that we have to have all the wines IGT, and the name Tokai Milano wasn't permitted anymore. And in the same day, the guy from the labels, he came and said, well, we need to make the order for the labels. And he told us, oh, you can't use the name Tokai Milano. I said, okay. And my mom said, okay, let's call it Yakut. And it was something which comes out very fast and very, very easy. And the name Yakut is something I think which comes from genius, and it works very well. It's basically a Tokai backward, which I think really nice.
Yeah, I love that. It's like basically you can't use the name Tokai anymore. It's like, fine, we'll just use it the same word backwards. I love that. I think that's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha, for running through even, you know, the idea that you hold back so much or the wines for so long in order to, present them properly to folks, even up to 10 years, correct? 10 years in bottle before releasing. When you think about the people who are coming to you and knowing Radikon wines now versus when you first started, when you were getting into the business alongside your father, is it a different, I don't know, are the fans of your wines different clientele, different people who are coming and understanding and enjoying your wines, or have you grown and evolved with a pretty steady demographic?
Everything is completely different.
Everything's different.
Everything is different. The people, the wine world by itself, and it was quite tough at the beginning when I started really to work with my father. Let me say around, I started very young, but I finished my high school and I started to make university in 2002. And that can be the period where I start to have been more and more involved in the work of the winery. And then it was basically at the beginning of the sales of orange wines. Then I can still remember a lot about people who tell us, "Oh, this is faulty, this is not good, this is not drinkable." And then we talked a lot. My father, me, and my mom. We talked really a lot about this wine. We tried to explain what we are doing. We tried to explain how these wines can be approached, and it was a long work. It was a really long work because we had to basically rebuild all the market we had before, because all the people who was drinking the classic barrique style wines my father used to make, they basically go away. Then they went to other people to buy non-wines. And we slowly built something. We slowly built a good group of people to they can understand the wines, they drink the wines. And obviously I think it's a style of wines, once you really start to understand and you really it's even very difficult to go back on the other side again. Then I think that this is the nice thing, because basically we trapped a lot of people in this style. Then basically that now the market is different. The market now it's much more easier. Everybody know if you say word orange wine, the people know what it means. If you say maceration on the skins, they say, okay, we know what you're talking about. And basically you should just explain what you're exactly doing, because the orange wine and the skin contact, it's becoming a word which is nothing in the same way of the other. All the producers are doing their own style, all the producers are doing some different stuff. Then obviously it's more difficult to understand, but then you just need to explain what you are doing. We have much more bottles now. We have much more clients now. We have much more people who are really passionate to these wines. We have much more collectors who buy wine every year. They put in a bag and they try to preserve the wines for a longer time. And yeah, you can open bottles from years ago. You can, and they are still very good. This is something which is makes me very happy. Then yeah, that's I think that it was the right way to make wines. There's a lot of new winemakers who are making the style and putting new people in the world. It's orange wines now are basically everywhere, from Australia to US to UK. There's everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and now it's good to keep spreading the word of like quality, thoughtfully made orange wines, and then just people trying to jump on the bandwagon. So I'm glad you guys are explaining it more. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are looking forward to, what's in the cards for the future with Radikon? I know you have a project coming up where you're working some in Slovenia. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. The first thing that I told you, we had war in 2000, a little bit more than 100 years ago. It was World War I. And after this war, it shows up a new border, which divides basically families and parts. And we are Italians, we are even Slovenians, because the culture is from this part. This part it's a lot. We are all very connected to Slovenia. And the project was always for my father to have to going back to the origin, because my grandfather was from a village which is now in Slovenia, but going back to origins, and now we finally managed to do this. Then we have the Vineyards in Slovenia, and we are going to release very soon 2 new wines which are made with Slovenian grapes. Then we import our grapes basically because of the paper stuff. We should import our grapes, but we are going to do two new wines. This is my sister's project mainly. We still work together. My sister joined us to work in the winery in 2018. I didn't tell them that, but now it's still a family business, and it's me, my mom, my wife, and my sister. And my sister joins us in 2018. And after a few years, he was trying to understand how it's going. Now she likes the wine. She likes wine. She likes the work. And then we say let's say that she's helping me to make the wines, and she wants to make her own wines. Then with these grapes, the project is mainly her, and she's trying to do something which is, let me say, a little bit more easier than Slatnik, with just a few days on the skins and 1 year of aging. Then something different still. It makes sense because she wants to do something to try, and then it's two different ways. The white is made mainly with our local varieties. It means Ribolla, Milano, and Malvasia. And because these vineyards in Slovenia, they have some Malvasia, then this is a thing. And the red is mainly made with Merlot and Cabernet. And this is the idea of the new wine. The new project is going there. We are going to build a cellar there. If we'd be in the future, will be a cellar there, then we are going to make these wines there. But at the moment, we are still having the wines in Italy, but we import the grapes, and we've been right here. This is the future of the ideas. We really want to make something different, and really putting this dot in Slovenia for us is very important.
Awesome. And that's still going to be under the Radikon name, but she'll just have her own name to look at base. Cool.
No, the label is Radikon because we are Radikon. We are all Radikon. We are going to change a little bit the label of the S line because we want to put the leaf everywhere on our labels. And it's not blue, but I think that the leaf is something for us very important. And in the future, all our labels, they will have only the blue leaf or just the leaf.
Yep. Awesome. Sasha, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. This was so cool to hear more about these wines that I've read about and tasted, but never really gotten to speak with you in depth. So I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and thank me for the occasion to talk about all these things.
All right. That was our interview with Saša Radikon. I hope everybody goes and finds some Radikon wines. I think his Slatnik is actually, and the CV are actually pretty findable in the US. Some of the more aged Ribollas will take a little more digging, but you're definitely able to find it. And once you do, you can share those wines with friends using your Corvin. Corvin allows you to taste multiple bottles with your friends without having to pop the cork on any single bottle. So that way you can show them a range of wines, whether they're just getting introduced to a wine like a serious orange wine, or they're trying to try some Pignolo for the first time. You can use your Corvin to help people try all of these different varieties from the Friuli area. So that is our episode for this week, and we'll be back with another interview and episode next week. Cheers.